if I look back at Carrie's development, when we started swimming massive amounts and not necessarily pulling a lot of the main sets, her run started to inch up and inch up and inch up.
That Triathlon Show 240. Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to another episode of That Triathlon Show, the podcast presented by scientifictriathlon.com. I'm your host Michael, and on today's episode I interview Scott DeFilippis and Carrie Lester. Scott and Carrie are both professional triathletes and coaches. They are also partners, and Scott coaches Carrie. So this is another interview in the realm of a coach and their athlete, or an athlete and their coach on the line. We will discuss a number of training-related topics, the overarching training philosophy of Scott and Carrie, and the experiences and influences, including, for example, Brett Sutton and Gerry Rodrigues, that led to this philosophy. And we also discuss how age groupers should apply these concepts. Before we get into the interview, big thanks to our sponsors, Precision Hydration. And as a personal anecdote, I have become really hooked on Swift, initially through the COVID-19 lockdown when I was forced to train inside, which I do anyway a lot, but now I was 100% stuck inside for a while. And I decided to give Swift a try and found that I actually really enjoyed it. You can still follow your structured training plan, but I could do training together with friends in different countries and so on. So super cool. I just fell in love with it. But through that, actually what happened is that now, even though I can go and ride outside, I still do, like the vast majority of my training is inside. And I'm just sweating so much training indoors. I might sweat a lot going outdoors as well in the Portuguese sun in the summer. But indoors especially, I find that I really need to use precision hydration, especially if I have a run later in that day. Hopefully pools will open soon, and then swimming will be the same thing, just to avoid cramping in later workouts, and just to make sure that you stay on top of hydration, which I find to be of particular importance when you have double workouts on the same day. You can get Precision Hydration's electrolyte products and match them to how you sweat by taking a free online sweat test on precisionhydration.com. And you can get 15% off your order with the promo code ThatTriathlonShow15. And thank you to Roka that you can find on roka.com. Another personal anecdote here, because I have been trying out some new Roka products recently. And I just want to mention that my new favorite Roka products are definitely the Maverick X2, the new flagship wetsuit model. No surprise there. I assumed that would be the case, but it's just an absolutely amazing wetsuit. In particular, I think that the core stability that it gives and how that helps the transfer of propulsion from the lower body, from the core through the stroke is really amazing. But in addition to the Maverick X2, the Matador sunglasses are really great. I use them all the time, both for training and outside of training. So definitely also highly recommended. Check out Roka on roka.com and get 20% off your order with the discount code that you can get on roka.com/TTS. Now, without any further ado, here's the interview with Scott DeFilippis and Carrie Lester. Today we have two guests on That Triathlon Show, Carrie and Scott. Welcome. How are you guys doing?
We are well, thank you.
Great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Doing fine.
Yeah, this will be an interesting one, an exciting one. I've done, I think, one of these before with two interview guests, or I have done a few more actually, but I have done one in particular that was sort of an athlete and their coach. And I know that, Carrie, you also coach people yourself, but in this particular context, you will play the role of the athlete and Scott will play the role of the coach. So why don't you take turns to tell us about your respective backgrounds in triathlon and outside of it?
Okay, I'll take the lead. For me, I didn't start triathlon until I was in my early 20s. I think maybe 23, 24. And before that had really, no experience at all in triathlon. I think growing up, I ran track, 100 meters, 200 meters. I really hadn't run anything over 400 meters until possibly late teens. So yeah, I was always more of a short distance athlete. I think I dabbled in a little bit of water polo in high school, netball. I mean, I played a lot of sport growing up, but it wasn't until early 20s that I found triathlon. And it's been my only sport really ever since.
How long did it take you to go from starting out at 23, 24 until you turned professional?
It was, I think I raced as an age group athlete for probably, I think, 4 or 5 years. I started, as a very, very beginner. My first event was in Queensland, Australia. It was a series that I think they still have. It was the Gatorade Triathlon series, and it was a sprint distance races, half sprint. They had, I think the first race that I did there was a 200 meter swim, 10-kilometer ride, I think, and a 2-kilometer run. So it was like super short. It was over in like 20 minutes. And then they had, that was like, I think they called it the Enticer back then. And then you could do the double that distance. So that was my first one. It was over so quickly. I remember I was just like, okay, well, the next time I'm going to do the longer event. It was 400, 20K, 5K run. So, I just started with that series, and then we have one of the most iconic races in Australia, the Noosa Triathlon. So that was quickly, my goal. And geez, it all really just started from there. I just loved the experience of, that series in Queensland, and I just always wanted to just keep doing new races within Australia, I guess, really. And I'm answering this horribly. It's just been so long that I can't even remember those races. It feels like it was so long ago. But yeah, it really started with Noosa, and I just fell in love with it.
Carrie, I want to ask you about whether you actually managed to like hit the ground running and be like pretty fast for an age grouper in those early races, or do you have any sort of humbling stories about slow goings at the start of your career that might encourage some of the listeners that somebody who is now a professional and has finished top 10 in Kona started out as just about anybody? And I don't know the answer, but I'm curious to hear.
I think it was funny. I do remember that very first race. It's funny because I can remember that one pretty clearly, but anything in between that is a little kind of fuzzy. It's funny. But that first race, I remember the first bike I had, I bought for, I think it was $500. I bought out of the local trading post, which in America here, it's Craigslist. It's the same thing. But I bought a secondhand giant road bike, which was way too small for me. And I was so excited because it already had the clip-in pedals. And the person I bought it from gave me a pair of shoes as well because I didn't have cycling shoes. I'd never used the clipless pedals. So I got the whole package for $500, and I turned up to do this race. I think it was Raby Bay, It was the first of the triathlon series for the summer, and I can remember, like, I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't know anything, in the transition. I basically just copied what everyone else was doing. And I can remember running out of the transition off the bike out of the swim to get on the bike. And I just remember putting these big clunky shoes on and running out to get on the bike to mount the bike. And I just, had to be guided through the race from the volunteers, and I just had no idea what I was doing, but it was so much. I just remember it being so much fun. I did win, which was cool. But yeah, it was just such a learning experience because I didn't know anything, and I quickly joined a training group on the Sunshine Coast after that. The coach was Toby Coote, who is excellent with junior racers, but also just beginner triathletes, because he takes you through everything that you need to know in terms of, bike transitions and just open water swimming, just all of the basics that you need to know. I learned from Toby and the group up there on the Sunshine Coast. So that was a really good learning point for me in triathlon.
All right. And Scott, what about your background? Can you tell us about that? And in particular, your training and racing under Brett Sutton with Team TVB when that was a big thing.
Yeah, so I grew up on a different sunny coast, the sunny coast of New Jersey. And I was actually afraid of the ocean till I was 12 or 13. And at one point it was all my buddies were learning how to surf, and it was time for me to get over my fear of the ocean, and finally got over that. And I was an active kid, playing everything from basketball to ice hockey, a little bit of golf, baseball, touch football with my friends in the neighborhood. So I was one of these kids that I was out from the time you got home from school until last light. My older brother was a runner, so that was sort of the path I was meant to follow, I suppose. I got into high school and I didn't want to run. I wanted to play ice hockey, but the reality was I was 5'4" or so, 5'5", not much smaller than I am right now. And it was pretty clear I wasn't going to make the hockey team, and started running. And so fortunately my brother took me under his wing, and he was really my first coach. And I had some pretty good success, which led me on to running at the University of Tennessee. And while I was at UT, I came home for the summers to New Jersey and started lifeguarding. And that's where I met Brian Shea, who mentored me into triathlon. He was just in my year, you should maybe think about doing triathlon. And this was in the late 90s. And went to a development camp in 2002, I believe that was, with USA Triathlon, and they accepted me into their recruitment camp, which has come a long ways since then. Nowadays, it's such an amazing program, and I was part of one of the pioneers of that program. But Rick Rosenkrantz took me under his wing and tried to get me to bridge the gap towards the Olympics. But I realized fairly quickly that the ITU circuit just wasn't. I didn't have the finances, nor I didn't really. The swim was an extremely frustrating piece of the puzzle for me. And at the time, I was in a relationship with my college sweetheart, and we just decided to move back to New Jersey, and I was gonna manage my brother's running store, Runner's High. And through a series of life events, I ended up running into Brett Sutton at 28 when I decided to come back to triathlon after running at a semi-American elite level. I was trying to make the Olympic trials and running quite a bit, and lowered my 10K PR and half marathon PR. I ran a couple of marathons, but I wanted to try Ironman. And so Brett was at the time starting Team TBB. And through a friend who was actually a Filipino American who was a part of the program in Subic Bay, he knew Brett was looking for an American. He also knew Brett wanted to attract an athlete that wasn't a triathlete, and thought it would be a perfect fit. So Arlen McAfee emailed me, and I got an email from Brett Sutton one day. I barely knew who the guy was. I was so new to the sport. I'd done one half Ironman, and he invited me to Subic Bay, and I was single and had the means and got a credit card and bought a flight to Subic Bay, and I arrived in camp, and within 2 days, Brett said, "Right, I'll give you 3 years. Can you dedicate 3 years of your life?" And he explained to me the process, and we had a little bit of funding. So Alex Bach and Brett had this fantastic program that they were starting, and I'm forever grateful for that opportunity because it led me on to a whole new life that I don't know what I'd be doing. I was able to live the dream for a really long time, and I'm still living the dream, which led me to Carrie. Carrie came into the group 3 years later, and we started dating, and the rest is history.
And when you come to Subic Bay to the training camp, and Brett explains this 3-year process, what exactly does that? Not exactly, but in broad strokes, what does that entail? Is it more about the time it will take you to achieve certain results, or is it actually that you already have sort of laid out in front of you a specific, I guess, periodization of training that you will be doing, and that will be the process that takes you to your potential, your best potential you? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, there's no roadmap with Brett. It's very much a work in progress and a work of art. So he looks at each individual, and trust me, plenty came and went in those 3 years. But he and I got on like two peas in a pod. And he basically said it takes most males 3 years to learn how to train for an Ironman, and then it takes them another 3 years to learn how to race the Ironman. And with you, we're going to do it. We're going to do it in 3 years. Within 3 years' times, I'm going to make you an earning professional. And he was very upfront. He said, "Look, you're a small guy. I don't know if we can ever get you to the front pack in Hawaii, but if we can bridge the gap to 8 minutes to the leaders and get you in the race, you'll run your way into podiums and start earning money." That was the goal, to be a working professional. And he pretty much did it within 3 years. We had one setback where I broke my collarbone. I think in 2011, I was entering my third year with him, and I had crashed in Switzerland, and I was about to break through, and that was a big setback. But I flew home to New Jersey, had it fixed by luckily a sponsor of mine, Dr. Goldberger, had been helping me with a little bit of cash to get to camps and follow Brett around the world, and he was able to fix me on July 5th, the day after 4th of July in the States, which, as you know, is a big holiday. And I stayed home in New Jersey for a few days and flew back to Switzerland and got right back into camp. And that kicked off basically my 2012 year, which ended up being a breakout year. And that's, funnily enough, the year I met Carrie.
What aspects of training did you find that helped you the most? And now in hindsight, looking back, what parts of the training program that you did helped you bridge that gap in any of the disciplines that you want to highlight? Just to give some examples.
It was all mental training for me because I couldn't wrap my head around the duration of the event. I had run 2:20 low for the marathon and an hour 5 for the half marathon, but wrapping my head around running a marathon after being on your bike for 4.5, 5 hours was just incredible. So throughout the year, wherever, you'd start the year in a heat camp, and I remember one session we did was in Thailand. He had me run 50 Ks at a clip, and it started at 8 a.m. And you finished I don't know how many hours later, 3.5 hours later. And that was a mental exercise. There was no science behind that at all. It was just him trying to get me to a point where I was breaking mental barriers down. And then the same would be in the water with, if someone had a big birthday, we did the 100 by 100, or the big bike weeks in Switzerland. So you land in Lausanne, and every single day you had to climb the mountain home. And Carrie and I have kept that going. We still go back to Lausanne. It doesn't look like we're going this year, but Lausanne has become sort of a second home to us. So the aspect, those mental lessons that he gave me have stuck by for us for the remainder of our careers. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I guess it's not surprising given what I've heard from others about Brett's coaching, and books like Chrissy Wellington's, for example, is also a lot about the developing the mental aspect of things, which is obviously a crucial component of performance at the highest level or end level. So, Carrie, you have been racing now for a long time professionally, and how has your training changed over the course of this professional career? And also, if you can elaborate on why those changes took place in the cases where you actually know why that happened.
The training has changed pretty significantly, I think, probably in the last 3 to 4 years, I guess, when I think about how we were training, back in maybe sort of 2014, I think. Scott and I, when we started dating in 2012, we spent probably 3 years there together where we were moving around a lot. And in that time as well, there were some pretty significant changes, in our careers as professional athletes, where Team TBB broke up. We started training with Siri Lindley, and then we were on our own. We decided to take it on ourselves, probably 2015, I think that was. So there was years there where we were kind of trying to figure out what was going to work for us, what training worked for us, where we were training. So I think we've really kind of figured it out now, what works for us. If I look back, we focus a lot more now on the swimming. We've brought in Gerry Rodrigues with Tower 26. We've been swimming with Gerry now for 2 years.
Now going on 3
going on 3 years.
Yeah.
So I think really when we started training with Gerry for the swim and really starting to put some focus on our swim, I think that's where we really started to kind of work out what was really working for us. So if I can sum it up in any way, I think our training now is just much more structured. We have a real focus on the swim, which is definitely not helping with this pandemic because we've really taken a back step there because the swimming was such a focus for us. But we've really put a lot of structure into our swim, also into our riding. We definitely don't go out, and do as many kind of easy long rides. The riding is a lot more structured now. And the same thing with the running. We have probably 2 focused run sessions a week. I guess I wouldn't call the other run sessions junk miles, but everything is just more structured.
Has more of a purpose.
It has more of a purpose. So for us, it's far more enjoyable when we're going out and doing those training sessions with that purpose.
So did it used to be just about getting in a large amount of volume before? Was that kind of where you were coming from?
Yeah, I think so. There was a lot more of those more volume. We still had the structure there for some of the sessions, definitely for the running, the riding a little bit. There wasn't as much structure for the swim. We were a little bit lost in swimming there, and what works for us. But yeah, I think definitely now with the more structured, more purpose in the sessions, that's where we've seen the most changes in the last 3 years.
Right. Yeah. And what is your typical volume? Let's assume in a normal situation when we might actually have a race coming up in, I don't know, 2 months time or so, like your normal sort of bread and butter training week. How much are you training, and how does that break up into swimming, biking, and running?
I think Scott's going to answer this as well for me, but I think in a high volume week, I think we're probably at about 25. I think we're about a 25-hour kind of training week. And if I can break that up, I think we probably look at we swim, about 6 hours, ride 12 to 15, and we would run, about seven hours. At the moment, though, we have been able to keep much of the run and ride volume going with this pandemic. It's really only the swim hours that we haven't been able to keep going. So we're still training around 20 hours a week, and in a big week, big training block would be at about 25.
Yeah. I should mention here, by the way, for the listeners' benefit, that we're recording this on the 27th of April, and the episode will be out late May or early June. So there is a little bit of a delay there, where maybe hopefully you are back swimming actually when this episode goes out. But by the time of this recording, that's not really the case. Scott, in regard to turning to coaching, how did that happen? What was the process? And can you tell us a bit about sort of your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, well, that was all Brett. Brett and Alex had this idea of trying to figure out different avenues for athletes to earn some income, because let's face it, in 2010, I mean, it hasn't gotten any better in the last 10 years. The prize money has gone down across the board. So Brett was starting his coaching business, and he began mentoring me pretty early on, and I think we got on so well that there was just this mutual respect for one another. And he'd seen my background with my working with my brother, and then my collegiate coach George Watts, who had worked with quite a few Olympians, and then after college, Dr. Jack Daniels helped me out as I prepared for a couple marathons. So Brett knew that I was a student of endurance training. I had read the Lydiard books, and he introduced me to Percy Sardi, and we would always talk training. So he knew I had a keen interest, and yeah, I think he had a vision for his coaching business. And so he threw me a big bone, and I remember him saying, the only way you're going to learn how to coach is if you start coaching. So we launched Team TBB Coaching, and then I eventually ended up managing that for him into 2011-12. So that's how it began. And it led me on a whole new career path that I never would even have imagined.
And now, what does your coaching look like? You have your own coaching business, correct?
Yeah, so I am really fortunate and blessed to have been able to work with so many amazing coaches, and I've learned something from each one of them that have really influenced how we go about things. And it's all a Brett. The Brett Lydiard Foundation is there. As Carrie mentioned, we got a little bit stale there when we went off on our own with an obsession with volume, and I certainly experimented on my own and made a lot of mistakes. But having Gerry at Terra 26 coming into our lives has been massive with the swim, and Matt Bottrell has helped me quite a bit with my cycling and paying attention to the aerodynamics. And our short time with Siri was really interesting because Siri brought into the picture this acceptance with rest. And that was something I think we struggled with, where we didn't really know, or maybe we didn't have the confidence to rest. We would just train and go into a race and then get back into it. And Siri really put that to bed and said, it's okay to have downtime within a season. It's okay to have rest days. Not that Brett wouldn't have rest days, but when you have Brett looking over your shoulder every morning, you know, he knows when it's time to send you home and go to bed. And when you're trying to do it by yourselves and a couple training together, we missed some of those opportunities and just kept plowing through. So I think now, yeah, it's a bit more, we definitely focus on swimming a lot more in terms of, with Brett, it's a big paddles pull. And that's a very important aspect of triathlon training. And I understand why he does it. But I think if I look back at Carrie's development, when we started swimming massive amounts and not necessarily pulling a lot of the main sets, her run started to inch up and inch up and inch up. And that's not a fault of Brett's. Brett takes an athlete and he has them in a group. And if you're in the 125 lane and you can't swim it, you're going to pull it. And he also would protect the legs. And we took a gamble by going with Gerry because there's a lot of intensity in his swim program. So it's paid off in a big, big way. Now, if you look at a man versus a woman, is there a little bit too much intensity in the swim there? At times, yeah. And that's where I've got to use my head and go, right, you should be pulling this set, take your legs out. Onto the bike, Matt's influence has been a lot more purpose, training with a purpose. We still do a lot of the long rides. I think for me, I respond a lot better to over distance rides of 6 hours plus or big bike weeks, whereas Carrie, she responds much better to a lot more intensity. She doesn't need rides over 4.5, 5 hours. She has this natural strength. She's a fat burner by nature, so she doesn't need big volume. So Matt's influence has really been instrumental as well. But then in the running, it's what I learned from Brett. We do a lot of the big sessions. Brett has copied what the African runners have been doing, and so I've kept that pretty close to how we trained with him. We do the big sets. We don't do massive sets like 38s anymore. We will maybe do 25 at the most, but we'll do 20 by 1K or 12 by 1 mile. The marathon.
What sort of pace would that be? Are you talking about marathon pace when you're talking about that sort of massive set?
The fartlek runs for me would be, if we're doing 800 on, 800 off, it would still be 240.
200 off.
Or sorry, 800 on, 200 off would be 238 to 240. Carrie is now, when she started doing those sets, she was probably running 320s.
I think I had Brett. Brett was yelling at me.
Slow down. She can now, Kaz can now tick away sub 3 minutes when she's really, really fit. Right before this pandemic started, we don't start those sort of sets until late winter. And the first one she did, she looked just as good as she had before Hawaii. And I thought, man, she had an incredible year last year. Maybe she's got one more big one in her. I don't know. Those are the big sets we do. And then we've started doing a lot of build runs, which we've pulled from the Kipchoge influence, I'll call it, where we do, when we're in Switzerland, we've got a path there that runs along the Rhone River. So
the death path.
Yeah, 10 miles out, 10 miles back, and it's 10 miles easy. And then 10 miles back starting at your marathon goal pace and then finishing a bit harder towards the end.
Right. Yeah. And a couple of things I want to follow up on there that you mentioned with the swim program and the intensity. You mentioned that potentially a bit too much intensity for males, although it might be appropriate for females. And that's something that I've actually I've met with Brett and attended a seminar that he held, and that's something that he talked about then. But I want to hear you and your thoughts on what exactly is the reason for this, that females may be able to tolerate more intensity than male athletes.
Well, I think it's twofold. Well, the testosterone levels in men are higher, so we can put ourselves into a hole. We can go a bit harder. So women have a natural buffer there that blocks them from killing themselves. But also the buoyancy issue. So if you look at a male and a female, a woman's carrying a little bit more body fat naturally, so they're going to float a bit more. They're going to be a little bit more efficient in the water, so you can hammer them a little bit more. Whereas with a guy, especially a non-swimmer like myself, you're not as efficient. So overreaching is a real possibility, and I think too much of it is not necessarily a good thing. In terms of Gerry's program, Gerry was an open water swimmer, and so he's training. His program is very much preparing for open water racing. So those elements are fantastic, and they really get you comfortable in the open water. But when you're balancing that with the triathlon program, biking and running, you just have to be a little bit careful, because he's obviously not, he's prescribing the swimming, the 2 main swims a week, and we're doing a few more, but those swims are more active recovery or strength oriented, more of a Brett Sutton type of a set where it's steady Eddie, as he would say.
Yeah, and that was the other follow-up question I wanted to get into, the focus on swimming with pull paddles. What exactly is it that you want to achieve with doing, especially when in Brett's programs that's such a large part of the swim program, from what I've understood?
So we've taken away the paddles, and that's just because it's Gerry's influence. I'm always tinkering because I'm a coach, and I've got a chest of gear that I love to play with. And paddles do different things for different athletes, right? One paddle might work really well for someone, while another paddle may cause some deficiencies. So I've taken the high road. We've eliminated the paddles, and especially for Carrie, when we took the paddles off, she developed a feel for the water that wasn't really there. And it's been instrumental. And I understand Brett's philosophy, and it's like pushing the big gears on the bike. You put the paddles on and you get strong. Whereas now we've implemented stretch cords and swimming.
And Eni buoy. I use an Eni buoy.
And we use the Eni buoy that some of Brett's athletes use as well. So especially coaching age group athletes that are from afar, I tell them, look, I think you're better off just not using a paddle, because I can't see what it's doing to you. So if there's someone in person, like we have a few athletes here that we coach in town, and we'll mess with paddles for a few, and we've had great success, but usually it's for technique and not strength.
So when you say that you can't see what it's doing for you, do you mean literally that's the problem, that you can't actually see them in person and how they're using them, rather than in the general sense that they generally would not work for the athlete?
Exactly. So if someone's using a stroke maker paddle, but it's causing them to scoop their hand out wide, we're creating some negative muscle memory issues there. Whereas if it's just you're using your hand, you're naturally kind of getting a feel for the water. And Brett would change his philosophy. It was always a work in progress. Every year, every camp, there was something new. And towards the end of our time with him, he moved towards the pull buoy, and then the old wheelbarrow tube. So you'd have a tube that kept you afloat, and a big pull buoy, and no paddles. And he was using that approach because it was really working for Nicola Spirig. So keeping her legs tied, but putting the inner tube between her legs for that strength without the paddles. So he was coming to that conclusion on his own as well. And since then, I think he's come up with
kind of went to the chopping board there at one point.
He started using a chopping board paddle, which I've never tried, but I'm sure it works for quite a few people. I mean, the guy's a coaching genius. He knows what he's doing. And like I said, he's there watching over you so he can see if it's not working. Trust me, Brett threw plenty of paddles at me over the years, and we tried everything. And in the end, it was for me, it was just use the pull buoy and he chucked the paddles and stuck me in the 120 lane and just said, try and keep up, go, hammer the water.
All right. Yeah. So it's a very simple approach then, and in the end.
Yeah.
So, Carrie, getting back to you, and we discussed a bit around the volume aspect, but let's go a bit deeper and just, again, imagining that these would be normal times where you would be swimming. Can you just walk us through what a typical training week might look like? What are the actual sessions that you have in there? Although you already mentioned some of them, but just perhaps to give an example, walking us through Monday through Sunday.
Yeah, Monday morning we would usually be up swimming, and we usually do a pretty big swim Monday morning. It always used to be kind of more of a strength swim, but we kind of mix it up now. We might have a little bit more intensity in there, but we usually start the week with a pretty big swim and a shorter bike or run in the evening. Tuesday again, we swim. Let me go back there for a second. We usually swim our big swims probably 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and then a Thursday and a Sunday will be more recovery swims. So we have 3 big swims in there, and 2 recovery swims, which is still around probably 4 to 4.5. About 4,000 yards. Listen to me, I'm talking yards.
In total, you might be at close to 30,000 yards or something.
Yeah, right. About that. The big swims are usually around 5,000. And then so Monday, Tuesday will be some shorter afternoon sessions, either a bike or a run. Wednesday is a pretty decent ride. We are lucky enough here to be relatively close to the mountains, so we'll go out and ride. We call it our Palomar Shuffle ride, where how much climbing is in there?
Oh, I think you can do 8,000 feet in a 4-hour ride. We have
quite a bit of climbing in that ride. That's usually a strength ride, but we have intervals throughout that ride. So it's probably about a 4 to 4.5 hour ride on a Wednesday with a run off the bike. Thursday is usually a quality run with a recovery swim. Friday, hard swim. Another structured bike ride in the afternoon. And Saturday, the weekend, we still do, a lot of our volume ride and run sessions there. Long ride Saturday with a run off. Sunday is a long run of either a long steady run, or it will be one of those structured runs that Scotty was speaking about before. It's a track run or long fartlek style run with a swim in the afternoon. So that's generally the week, and that's on repeat in the big training blocks.
Yeah, so that's something that's something that you generally just go through week in, week out, and you don't really do anything in terms of recovery weeks or that sort of thing. It's something that's meant to be sustainable throughout a longer build to your race.
Right. Yeah, we don't. I mean, there's those sessions. We have sessions in there that are recovery sessions. Those shorter swim, easy swim sessions. They're recovery sessions. Some of our runs or
the 2-hour runs are recovery.
Yeah, the 2-hour run is, I go out. I don't go out and run to pace ever on those runs. For example, if I go out and run, it's just I will run as slow as I want to run to feel like it's a recovery run. I don't want it to take anything out of me at the end of that run or ride or whatever I'm doing. So I'm happy to do it on my own. I'd rather do it on my own because I want to go at my own pace, and I don't want to feel like I have to keep up with anyone, which I don't normally anyway.
To give some examples there, what would your pace and power be when you really want to go that easy? Even if I know you don't run or ride to power, but if you measure those, what do they end up being typically?
On an easy pace?
Yeah, easy pace.
Running no faster than 8-minute miles. So 5 kilometer pace. I mean, that's only if I'm starting to feel good. At the end of those longer runs, sometimes you feel like the pipe's clear, and you feel like you want to go a little bit harder, but even then, I just don't. I'd be lucky to run under 8-minute miles for those sessions. Running and riding, I can't tell you. I don't look at power or anything. I just go and ride.
Right. Okay. Do you even measure power?
Yes, I have power. Yep.
Okay.
The only time I look at the power is if I have a designated interval.
Right. And that was what I was going to ask about next. So when you have those structured rides, so you mentioned the one on Wednesday, the longer one, and then on Friday you said, or was it Saturday? Either way, how do you typically do the bike portion of the program? What I mean to ask here is, how much are you shifting sort of the program towards more of the high intensity, shorter, harder intervals versus longer tempo, race pace, or even threshold type of intervals?
We usually have both of those in a week, and the Palomar Shuffle ride is our more strength endurance kind of intervals, where they'll be throughout that ride. We might do, for example, 3 by 30 minutes or some 20-minute. Those intervals will be longer. There could be an hour. Like, for example, the ride, we might do a 30-minute interval, and then there is a climb there, which is actually Palomar Mountain. It's a good hour. So we've done that, has been an interval before, like that climb that will be, at Ironman effort, for example, or it'll be build throughout the hour to, just under Ironman effort, 70.3. There will be structure throughout that ride, and it's always more based around kind of strength endurance, Ironman effort, maybe to 70.3 effort. And then those shorter threshold or above threshold efforts, they're done typically in our shorter trainer rides on a Friday, or I don't know, but they're always the shorter rides that we do those inside.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And Scott, perhaps you can also fill in on this same sort of question. What are your thoughts on kind of the different kinds of intensities in general in training and their use and applicability in training for long distance triathlon?
Yeah, well, there's, like I said, there's still the Sutton influence with a lot of the big gear work. Doing shorter stuff like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, that's been interesting to observe, giving some of that to Carrie, because I think it's been a massive benefit for her. Matt is big into the sweet spot work. So, yeah, a lot of that is done hour and a half at the most. But we still do quite a bit of time trial work. We're not doing any of that at the moment because there's really no point. We're a lot of the longer rides are more feel good. But something that Carrie didn't mention was our longer intervals. We go down to Fiesta Island, where the birthplace of triathlon. So it's about an hour, 15-minute ride for us to get there. And yeah, that's where we'll do our bigger sessions of 20 minutes, 30 minutes, up to an hour, where it's a 6-kilometer circuit and you're going around and around and around. And also we're actually currently learning the process of testing the VLA Max. So we're working with the inside guys. So we're getting a little bit more scientific. I think you have to, because so many athletes are interested in it. So that's been interesting to learn a bit about how our bodies are different, our physiology.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know if you worked with the new protocol yet, but I just went through that new updated protocol last week by the time of this recording. So that was a fun experience to get to update my profile, but in a new way, with perhaps slightly easier way, I would say, with the updated critical power protocol, and definitely a good tool to have in the toolbox. The other thing that I wanted to ask there is about the running. I think Brett has stated pretty strongly that there's never really any like super hard, like, lung busting 400s, or I might be getting that wrong actually. So you will need to correct me and tell me what he actually is saying, but sort of like slightly putting the brakes on to prevent injuries is sort of the gist I've been getting from what I've read and heard him say. Can you talk about that? And does that apply to you as well?
Well, the beauty of triathlon is the swim aspect, and we're seeing that now. There are so many benefits of swimming, and yeah, you can get that lung busting, that VO2 work in the pool, and I think that's what Brett does. So we've kept that as a part of our program. He doesn't ignore the speed, and neither do we. There's still, when I was in 2012, when I was really peaking with him, I was training with Nicolas Spierig. I was Nicolas Rabbit whipping boy. We complemented each other really, really well. But whenever we went flat out speed, it was never out of control, right? There was always an element of a feeling of control, but we were still ticking away 400s at 60, 62 seconds a lap. But it was controlled, right? It wasn't finishing that 400 and on the fence ready to throw up, right? You went right into your recovery jog. So anytime we did that, there was plenty of recovery in between those intervals. So we still do a bit of that. I'm 40 now, so I don't quite have that 62-second speed anymore, but we do some fast running. Actually, this week we're going to go to the track and do a little bit of fast running. Does that make sense? So the swim portion takes care of that top end. And if I observe as a fan of running, right, and you look at someone like Alan Webb, I believe, was so good so early in his career because he swam. And when he went full-time running, he sort of plateaued. And I sat and watched him because I was getting into triathlon. I always thought, if someone would get a hold of him and get him back in the water, I think his career would have lasted another 5 or 6 years. And if you watch Gwen Jorgensen at the moment, if I were training Gwen, or if Brett were training Gwen, I guarantee you she'd be swimming 20K a week to complement her running.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective, and actually, it would be interesting to have Gwen, when she was winning gold medals in triathlon, try to do the same running races she's doing now, and see if she might not actually even be better. I'm not sure. I'm not following her too closely, so I shouldn't maybe make any speculations like that. But I think that there's definitely some an interesting aspect, at least, to that thought and the crossover effect. The next thing I wanted to ask you, Scott, is about coaching age group athletes and your philosophy for age groupers. Is that very similar to what you described? And what are, if there are any potential differences in sort of your coaching philosophy when it comes to age groupers compared to professionals?
Well, our big ethos with KS Coaching stands for Keep It Simple Coaching. And yeah, that's definitely Brett influence right there, right? He keeps it simple. So we try and keep it as simple as possible. But our big message to the athletes and our ethos is to live a balanced life. So you do triathlon to enhance your life. If it consumes you, you're going down the wrong path there. And to be honest with you, I won't work with an athlete that wants to be all consuming with the sport. I think there's way more to life. The sport is an incredible way of life, and it can take you to so many amazing places and bring some amazing people into your life. So we try and lead by example, and our whole lives aren't on social media, but we do share some of the balance. Our Sunday fun days at our house, when we're at home in California, we have friends over nearly every weekend. And maybe that's the Italian in me. The neighbors and friends are like family. But in terms of the training, yeah, we give athletes a lot of the same work that we do, because frankly, they like to know that they're doing the same stuff, but we scale it. We scale it back. They're not doing quite as many reps. For example, yesterday we did a 2-minute fartlek session, and a lot of my athletes did the same thing, scattered throughout the world. Some did it on Saturday, some did it on Sunday, but the number of reps was less for them. Obviously, we're doing multiple long rides a week, whereas the age group athlete can't necessarily do that. So most of their long rides are done, on the weekends. Same with the running. I do swim them. I do swim them all 5 days a week, or I like to swim them 5 days a week. And they're all coming back to me now saying, my gosh, riding and running is a lot harder when you're not swimming. So they're all seeing the light, the aerobic benefit, and also the recovery benefit of being in the water. I like to tell people that swimming is the fountain of youth, and it's like seeing your chiropractor, your physical therapist, and your massage therapist all in one. So everyone's missing that. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and that's a good pointer for any coach listening, for how to sell swimming to athletes that might not be that into the idea. So I like that. I might use it myself. All right, a couple more questions. First of all, Carrie, going back to you, what would you recommend? And let's keep this discussion for age group athletes mostly. What would you recommend that they do in the current state of pandemic and potentially pools being closed, depending on how things develop in the next month or so from when we record this episode, in terms of their training? And how do you recommend that they approach triathlon in general?
Well, I think the first thing, and this has been difficult for us as well, I think for the swim at the moment, everyone has to accept that it is what it is, okay? Like, the pools are closed. No, not everyone has access to open water swimming. We just can't swim, okay? And we don't know when we're going to be able to swim again. You have to let the obsession of not being able to swim go. And we can try our best to maintain some of the aerobic fitness that we get from swimming. And we're doing that. We're riding and we're running. we're keeping that going, as much as we can. I have definitely noticed, so we're going into 6 weeks now of no swimming, and I can honestly say probably over the last 2 weeks I've started to notice that in my breathing just when I'm out running. There's nothing I can do about that. So it's just a point that you just have to accept that that's the impact that swimming is going to have. We do stretch cords. We've done them for years. We've continued doing them. The good thing about not swimming and now doing the swim cords is that I've been able to do more of the swim cords and increase the number that I do more quickly. Usually when I have that swim load there as well, I'm sort of tapped out, pretty quickly. I'm tired. So I'm not able to do as many of those. So I'm just really focusing on trying to maintain that strength a little bit and that feel of the swim stroke, and combine that with, the aerobic fitness from the biking and the running. So that's really all you can do, is whatever exercises you can do on dry land to kind of maintain that swim feel while, you keep the aerobic fitness going in other ways. So that's all we can do, and we just have to accept that. The other thing that is, I guess, a positive is there aren't races, scheduled for some time. So the ability to be able to get back in the pool and get some of that swim fitness back before races start, hopefully we'll be able to do that. So I think that's kind of a calming thought, I think, just to know that we will have that time. It's not all lost. We will be able to get that swim fitness back, to a certain degree. Does that answer your question there?
It does. Yeah, just one quick follow-up. How much time you spend on the stretch cords in a given session, and how many times per week do you do that?
So we do them, well, I try and do them when we're swimming, or when we have a full swim load, 3 to 4 times a week. And I try to do them before my swim session. Sometimes I find that it's better for me to do them afterwards. It just depends how much time I have before the session, how I'm feeling. Sometimes I actually do get a little bit tired from doing them. So if I do them beforehand and then get into the water, I don't like how I feel swimming. It's a personal thing. If you like doing them before or after, it doesn't matter. And Gerry Rodrigues has also confirmed that for me. It's a personal thing. There's no right or wrong in when you do the swim cords. But I try and stick to them 4 days a week, 3 to 4 days a week. And I do basically as many as I can until I start to fatigue. I do 3 to 4 sets, and I do as many repetitions as I can in the set to the point where I'm starting to get tired, fatigued, and I lose form. So sometimes it might be I can only get out 30 repetitions where I'm starting to get tired, and I feel like I'm losing my form. So I'll stop, have a rest for as long as I need to. It might be a minute, could be 2 minutes, 5 minutes sometimes. It just depends how tired I am, and then I'll do another set. So like I said, there's no right or wrong with the swim cords. It's all personal. But the most important thing is that consistency is key with them, and you can do these all year, and I think it's important to do them all year. Certainly there's times when you're in an off season when you probably don't need to be doing them, but yeah, it's an exercise that you can do for most of the year. And for me, I found the best way to kind of maintain that strength all year round, and it supplements the swim perfectly.
And when you're doing those repetitions, it's just the regular swimming motion with the swim cords. You don't have like a routine that you with different exercises that you cycle through. It's just the swimming motion, essentially.
Yeah, it's just the swimming motion. I actually just wrote an article for Blue 70, which is on their Instagram page, and I've actually demonstrated how I do the stretch cords and the routine of it. But it's very direct. Like I said, 3 to 4 sets. I like to, in the exercise, I said I like to do it like a double arm, like a butterfly double arm swim. Yeah, it's quick, very direct.
Right. And Carrie, we can continue with you for this final question, and then Scott can also answer this one. When it comes to actually executing in both training and races, can you each give one point that you consider important for like good execution of training and good execution of a race that the listeners of this podcast might find helpful?
I think the most important thing, firstly, is confidence. You need to be confident in yourself and your ability, what you're about to do. But you need to be very focused. You need to have a clear goals within the session or the race, and just know that you're prepared and confident in your ability to be able to execute that. And just always just focus on what you're wanting to achieve in that session or that race. Just always come back to yourself and just be confident in yourself and your ability to be able to execute that.
And Scott, same question to you, and feel free to take both execution of training and racing.
Yeah, I think to Carrie's point there, the training is to build confidence, and the more fit you get, the more confident you get, and that was Brett's experiment with me. He ran me to the ground. My breakout race was in 2012 Switzerland, Ironman Switzerland. 10 days leading in, I ran 38s, 240s, a marathon finishing up the mountain to Lausanne, and 15 1-milers, 520 with a 200 float. And my bike legs were useless in the race, but I was so confident in the run that I got off, and the only goal was to run under 245, and that was it. And it was a make or break moment, and I was so confident I could do it, and I ended up running 243, and that changed the trajectory of my career. So to quote Siri Lindley, she would say, the racing is a celebration of all the training, and I think that sums it up.
All right, perfect. And then finally, the rapid fire questions, and we can do Carrie and then Scott for each of these. And the first question is, what's your favorite book, blog, or resource related to triathlon?
I have probably two books that I like, that I've kept with me as my Bibles, I think, for the last few years. One of them is actually not related to triathlon, but I think it's a very good book for the mindset, and that is Relentless by Tim Grover. I have highlighted things everywhere in that book. That's my number one resource. And I also like I'm very passionate about the nutrition side of the sport. So I have I think it's Food for Sports Performance. I'm not exactly sure of the title, but it's by two Australian authors, actually, Louise Burke and Greg Cox, two very good sports nutritionists out of Australia.
Yeah, Louise Burke will have been on the podcast just a couple of episodes before this one goes live, I believe.
Excellent book. Fabulous resource for nutrition.
What about you?
Well, to be honest with you, I've really enjoyed your podcast this year. You bring some of the best minds of the sport in, so 100% sincere in that. So I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts, but Jack Daniels' book of running is one that I use quite a bit, and I'm a frequent visitor to Let'sRun.com because they publish a lot of great articles by athletes and coaches.
And Carrie, what's your favorite piece of gear or equipment?
Oh, my swim fins, for sure.
Which fins are you using?
I didn't swim with fins a lot before we started swimming with Gerry, but they're definitely my favorite piece of equipment. And my swim snorkel, I have two.
And Scott?
Yeah, Carrie stole mine, the snorkel. Yeah, I think the swim snorkel is one of the best pieces of equipment, especially for a non-swimmer, an adult onset swimmer.
And finally, Carrie, what do you wish you had known or done differently at some point in your career?
I was thinking about this, and I don't think I would change anything, to be honest. There's times I think back on and I think, I wish we hadn't have gone there, or I wish we hadn't have spent so much time there or something. But everything that we've done throughout our career we've learned so much from the training that we've done, places we've been. I can't really say that I would have done anything differently. Maybe I just would have started earlier. That's about all.
Yeah. And Scott, what about you?
Well, I mean, I wish I would have learned to swim a little bit earlier, but in terms of once I found the sport and I was all in, some of my development athletes, I'll say to them, if 38-year-old me could tell 28-year-old me anything, it would have been to follow Gerry Rodrigues. But at 28, when I found Brett Sutton, I needed to find him because he just opened my mind to so many things, how to train. Gerry came into my life at the right time. And I don't think I'd go back and change that. However, I do tell younger athletes that are trying to learn how to swim, go and follow Gerry.
Excellent. And finally, where can people follow you and keep up to date with what you got going on?
Well, we both have our own Instagram pages, Scotty D and Carrie Lester, Kaz Lester.
Carrie E. Lester. And Carrie handles the Instagram for KISS Coaching. So that's her responsibility.
And and we can put the link to KISS Coaching in the show notes as well.
That would be great. Yeah, I think we're both more active on Instagram. We're not very active on any of the social media fronts. We try to be, and we try to share as much as we can with people about our training and our lives. But like we've said before, it's never really it's not a focus for us. But we're more than happy to share anything with anyone. So yeah, follow our pages and feel free to ask us any questions. We're more than happy to share anything.
Brilliant. And thank you for sharing so much during this episode. It's been really great chatting with you. And let's hope that we can have some racing in the not too distant future. And good luck to both of you for that. And keep having fun with the training in the meantime. And let's hope that at the very least, swimming will be a possibility very soon.
We hope so. Thank you.
Thank you.
As usual, you can find the show notes for this episode on scientifictriathlon.com and links to some related episodes, including 2 interviews that I've done with Gerry Rodrigues and one interview that I did with Carson Kristen, who talked about a bit more about the Brett Sutton or the TriSutto philosophy of training. Brett Sutton being the founder of the TriSutto coaching company. As always, I'm keen to hear your feedback on any episode, but in particular, I do like to hear feedback on this kind of episode with two guests on the line, where one is the athlete and one is the coach, because I think it's something that could potentially be a really good regular occurrence. So keen to know what you think, good and bad. Next Monday, I have an interview on the line with researcher Izzy Moore from Wales, or from England in Wales. We will discuss running mechanics, running economy, footwear, and injuries. It's a great interview packed with information stemmed in science. So I think that there will be a real hit that many listeners will enjoy. But of course, in the meantime, we have another Q&A coming out on Thursday. If you are interested in coaching services, then definitely go and check out scientifictriathlon.com and the coaching services we offer. We currently have a fair number of slots available, and that will probably change as more and more people are starting to get back into normal racing and training again after the whole COVID-19 situation. It's still ongoing, of course, but the situation seems to be normalizing now. But now is a good time, if you're interested in coaching, to check that out, because as I said, there are slots available. So scientifictriathlon.com and click through to coaching, or send me an email directly and we can discuss about that. Big thanks to our sponsors, Precision Hydration, that you can find on precisionhydration.com. Go and take their free online sweat test to get a personalized hydration strategy and get 15% off your electrolyte order with the promo code ThatTriathlonShow15. And big thanks to Roka, that you can find on roka.com. Check out their wetsuits, tri-suits, swimskins, goggles, high-performance eyewear, and prescription glasses and sunglasses, and get 20% off your order with the promo code that you'll find on roka.com/TTS. Thank you, as always, for listening. Keep training smart and keep loving triathlon.